Welcome to Camp Chaos, where we celebrate the wild ride of modern womanhood.
Join us as we dish on motherhood, life's ups and downs, and all things pop culture that we know you want to talk about.
With special guests and expert insights, we're here to empower you through the chaos of everyday life.
Consider this your ultimate escape from the hustle and bustle. And as always, parental guidance suggested.
Camp is now in session.
Nikki Bostwick, wellness enthusiast, entrepreneur, and mom, and our friend. Welcome to Camp Chaos.
Thank you for having me. This is such a fun day.
We're
and
so
just
excited.
To watch you guys behind the scenes is so exciting.
It's a little chaotic, right?
It's very chaotic here.
I'm so impressed.
Oh my God.
I'm
well,
so
thank you.
impressed with you too.
We got only a few tears and, pulling out our hair, setting it up. But we are so excited to have you here. And not only because you are an incredible businesswoman, but you are an incredible mother.
Thank you.
I think that is the most wonderful compliment you can give any woman, is that you are an incredible mom. But what I want to talk about first is how you got into wellness. And I think I already know a little bit, but I want to tell Taylor and our audience of what wellness means to you and how you found your way to this world.
Yeah. So I'll try not to make it super long-winded, but I found my way just kind of gradually, I would say. Like in high school, I woke up one morning and I just asked my mom at 5:55 in the morning to take me down to Bikram yoga in North Laguna.
Oh.
And I was like, Mom, there's this class. I believe it's at 6 a.m. It's this thing called yoga. I don't know what it is, but I just literally woke up, opened my eyes and was like, I need to go. And I don't know what took over me. I just seen it, obviously you live there, driving around. I don't know, something in me told me to go there. My parents have had the worst relationship ever since I was a little girl. It was constantly conversations of them divorcing ever since I was 5 years old. So when I was 7, my dad told me they were going to get a divorce. I cried so hard. They didn't. I thought that by crying, I solved the problem or something. But obviously I didn't. It was just hidden from me. And so it was at that time, I was now 14, 15 years old and I'm in high school. They do live under one roof. They have a terrible relationship. And I had really bad self-esteem issues. I didn't eat properly. I was bulimic. I took a lot out on myself and my body. But one morning I woke up and I went to Bikram yoga and my mom drove me there. And she literally never woke up before 9 a.m. because she was I always was why is she not a morning person? But now I get it because I used to be a 6 a.m.er and I get so tired now on the weekends. I'm for sure I want to sleep in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went to Bikram yoga and at the time, it's not there in Laguna anymore, but at the time, this brother and sister owned the place, Melissa and Jason. And it was just something that I committed to. I did a whole month challenge. I just went for 2 weeks because it was the introductory thing. I felt it changed my life because during that time, I felt I accomplished something. I was never into sports. So that really felt it was my thing, that where I learned, because I think in sports, you learn about accomplishments and you learn about yourself. And I didn't have that. So that was a time where it was just so healthy for me to do something outside myself that taught me to self-regulate. And it changed my life. And even though I was still drinking, there was something in me that it sparked something in me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel in yoga, there's a mind-body connection that until you've done it and experienced, it's almost a euphoric high that you get.
Yes, especially in a heated class,
yeah,
right? You're just addicted.
Yes.
So Jason, unfortunately, he ended up passing away a few years later from a tragic car accident.
Oh my God.
And I was already in college at that time, but he would have these beautiful conversations with us in between our poses. And we would just be resting and he would be I never thought about this, but at one time I'll never forget it. He said, don't take Tylenol before class. Some people do that. They take Tylenol or Advil or whatever, so they don't feel the pain of the stretch.
Oh my gosh.
And I was wait, what? I'm too young to listen to this
conversation, yeah.
But it was my introduction also to, that's really interesting. People use these medications in a different way as well than what they're intended to be used for. And that also made me just think differently about pharmaceuticals or about over-the-counter medication in general. I went off to college. I went to Oregon because my husband Eric and I met at Laguna Beach High School, and he went first. And because my parents were in like such turmoil, I was like, peace out. I'm following him. So we were long distance for a year. When I met my husband too, that really helped me in terms of wellness in like such an interesting way, because I felt like that was like the first time it was like I was getting external love, right? It was from someone else, but it taught me that I can love myself. That love is just so healing and beautiful. And I feel like that's also part of wellness. Just, you know, the experience of being in a relationship and learning that you are able to be loved and you are lovable. And the first step is to love yourself so that you can teach this other person also how to love you. And so then anyways, went off to college. I wasn't bulimic anymore. Basically, I like met Eric and stopped being bulimic. It was so crazy. He like literally healed my bulimia, or so I thought. When I came back, I started teaching yoga in college and stopped drinking when I started teaching yoga. And then, or like barely ever drank at that point. I was just like over it. My first year, I obviously like, I still did, but then I was kind of like, I did all this in high school. I don't really need to do that. So I got into eating clean. I became vegan because that's what Oregon's all about. So I went vegan, and then I went raw vegan, and I went to culinary school.
Tried it all.
Yeah.
I've tried it all.
I went to culinary school for plant-based food after college. I studied business, and I wanted to open a wellness center. So I went off of like my medication in college too. So I used to be on Adderall. I slowly went off Adderall and birth control.
I feel like 50% of our generation was on Adderall, if not more.
And my parents were
Everyone was
so
on
against it. So when I went off to college, I started taking it. My school prescribed it to me.
Well, that is what's so scary. It's so easy to get Adderall.
It's
It's
so
actually
easy.
like you're at the doctor. Oh, would you like an Adderall prescription and a Xanax so that you could sleep at night?
I know. It's like an upper and then a downer. And the problem actually was that there was a shortage. And I think they still have this problem. So basically, I didn't realize how reliant I was on Adderall until I couldn't get it anymore because there was such a shortage because so many people are on it.
And then did you feel like a meth head?
Oh my gosh, I was bedridden. I literally could not get out of bed. And I was like, I didn't have this problem before. What happened? So then I was like, this is bad. Like
my body is dependent.
What if I can't get it again? Like I can't function. So that's when I was like, well, if I can go off of it because there's a shortage and I'm forced to, then I should just go off of it. So
were you scared of like what it might do to your brain?
At that point, I wasn't, because I was like literally forced to get off of it because I couldn't get it anyways, you know? So then I would take it here and there. And then I was just like, I don't need this. Like I gradually come
I feel
to a
like
place.
Adderall is a prescription eating disorder. I hate saying it that way, but it's like, yeah, people say, oh, it helps me concentrate. It helps me.
No.
It is for girls
Who
that don't want to eat.
Literally.
And
can't concentrate. Yeah. It's a whole, it's so
and then
bad.
it's so addictive.
It's so bad for your body.
Yeah.
It's so bad for your body. Aside from all of that too, it's just deteriorating everything.
Your bones, your teeth, your hair.
It's so gross. It's bad.
Oh my gosh,
And
do you look back and be like, oh my God, I cannot believe I was this Adderall junkie?
I cannot believe it. I would get nosebleeds. I would get nosebleeds from it because I was just like so wired. I was like, and I just wouldn't eat. But
it's
I was also
scary to laugh about it, but it's like, how? You're like, I'm so healthy and I'm popping Adderall.
And I'm vegan and I have like zero cholesterol.
And my hair is falling out.
It's
And
like, I felt healthy because what happened was I became vegan. I stopped eating processed foods because at the time, like there wasn't a bunch of options, you know? So I would eat more clean. I would go to the co-op. We had a great co-op in our town, in our college town. I loved it so much. And I loved the smell and like just everything about it. So,
but while you're on Adderall,
yeah,
like this is a very, yes.
So I was like, I need to get off of this. I got off of it. And then that's when I just like, you know, I kept reading, I kept applying, I kept reading. But then I went, I feel like too extreme because I was like, I'm afraid of sugar. I'm not going to have fruit because I can't have sugar. And I'm like already plant-based, you know, it was just crazy. It got to a point where I just got sick. I was already off of all the medication, but I didn't have my period for 9 months after I went off birth control. And I was, the birth control pill, I should say. I say birth control, but really, obviously, birth control can be a method, and that's what I was using afterwards. And so I saw an incredible doctor who's still my doctor today, has been my doctor for over a decade. And like working with him has been incredible because he helps people get off processed foods and all the things. But to me, he's like, just go home and eat everything and anything. Cause he knew I already had all these like crazy high standards and I was just depleted. I gained so much weight by not eating. Like it was crazy. My body was holding on to inflammation. I was basically like only 10 pounds lighter than what I was when I was like giving birth to my son.
Wow.
Yeah.
And starving.
I was starving.
And fat.
Yes.
Like this, something is not working
It
here.
was so weird.
But were you like not eating because you wanted to be skinny or because you were afraid of bad foods? No, because
I was like afraid of bad foods. Like I went to so many extremes and then I found my place because it's not about being
did you
vegan.
Find your place before having kids?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not about being vegan. Obviously, it's not about being, just carnivore. It's not about that. It's really goes back to just eating whole foods that are unprocessed. I really believe that people can thrive with all these different diets because if they're doing it in a way that feels good to them, they're not coming at it from a place of fear, right? My disordered eating was there the whole time, right? It was
you just took on different habits.
Yeah.
And so like the bulimia thing carried on to Adderall, that carries on to,
it wasn't until I had my son that I really just felt, obviously I had that feeling with Eric too, but it was like, I finally was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with my body. I love it. But created life. Yeah. Like, this is amazing. Like, I'm not in a hurry to try and lose weight. It's not about losing weight. It's about addressing our emotional problems because basically what happened was I moved back from Oregon and then I started having these, not symptoms, what's it called? These episodes of bulimia. And I was like, wait, I thought this was like all gone. But it wasn't gone. I just ran away from my problems. I came back and my sister and my dad and my mom are here.
So it was more emotional.
Yes, it was all emotional. So it wasn't until I started doing a lot of work, diving deep into my own trauma, my ancestral trauma with my family. What am I holding on to that's not mine? What is actually mine? And unraveling all that. I'm a big believer in healing ancestral trauma.
Did you read It Didn't Start with You?
No, I haven't read it. Good, yeah. I just happened to have this unbelievable therapist. I drive to him to LA. He's in Beverly Hills. He's since retired, but he had this really weird method until I met my doctor who also does therapy, where he'd it's weird to say, but I'll share it with you guys. He'd essentially guide you through killing a family member.
One that you pick?
Yeah. You just pick someone. And you're you don't want to do it because you're this is someone I love. But then it's really this way to detach, right? It's his method of detaching. And you're you're the fucking weirdest person ever. Why are you making me do this? But then you go through what, I don't know, just your real emotions and what's yours and what's not yours and what's theirs and what's their story and what you've made up
emotionally heal from generational trauma.
And it was magic. It was doing surgery. Emotional surgery.
Probably also things that you realized that you didn't realize that you were carrying from your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors.
And blaming them. And it's not, everyone comes in with their own story. And I think that was the most healing. And that's what really inspired me to start my company, is that experience of healing my emotional trauma.
Yeah.
And then becoming a mother was part of that. But I became a mother after I started The Fullest.
So you were already very well into the road of wellness before becoming a mom.
Yes.
Okay. Because I know you did home births.
I did one home birth. I wanted to do home birth with my first, but Eric was
Grace,
scared.
Your second was a home birth. Okay. So how did that look like for you when you're welcoming a baby into the world and already being so scared of everything around you and trying to feel I found my voice and this is the way that I'm going to raise my baby. But how was that becoming a mom?
So at the time I was kind of naive to it all. I remember being part of this Facebook group, and this might be a little controversial, but I was part of this random mom Facebook group here in Orange County before I gave birth. I was pregnant at this time. And there was this mom talking about how there's this little boy who had high white blood cell count, and his doctors decided to put him on chemo. And the mom said, why are you putting my son on chemo? It's just high white blood cell count. Let's figure out the root cause. It doesn't, you you can't find the cancer. You can't tell me if he actually has cancer. All you can tell me is that he has high white blood cell count. I don't want him to be on chemo. Well, this escalated into a whole case, a legal battle, because they can put your child on like medical hold for this stuff. And at the time I was like, God, that's like horrible.
How did you find yourself into somebody else's problems?
I was randomly like, oh my God. So I skimmed through it. I got a download. Like I told Eric about it, but then I just like moved on, right? Because I'm not a mom yet. I don't really understand the depth of this situation in California. Specifically, it was in California. And basically, then I went on to give birth to my son, Truth, at a hospital. And I literally said no to like every hospital intervention because I was like, I trust my own team of doctors. I don't need the doctors at this office or at this hospital to decide anything for me. I'm going to work with my pediatrician and decide what makes sense for my son. Well, one thing I didn't say I wasn't going to do was the heel prick test, which is optional actually in California. Luckily, I had a hospital birth and luckily I did do the heel prick test because that's how we found out my son had a medical condition.
So it's so interesting that you say that because I would think that you'd be so like crunchy. Nope, I'm declining everything.
Yeah,
but
I did decline everything. Somehow that made its way. And like,
Thank God.
Yes, it was all like that by design because I'm so anti everything. And somehow I ended up having this hospital birth. I always wanted a home birth. And then, I mean, Hoag is like such an incredible hospital. Yeah. We're so lucky to be here and have Hoag. And I felt like I loved my experience. There was so many things I didn't like. I was pushed, cytotech was pushed on me. That's something I've talked about with Lindsay Milas. I couldn't say the word cytotech. That was how they induced me because I knew so much stuff. I was like, I don't want Pitocin. I don't want this. I don't want this. But like cytotech made its way into my world because they were like, oh, I know you don't want Pitocin. I know you want to do a natural birth and not be given an epidural. So let's do cytotech. It's easier to like handle the what's it called? The contractions with cytotech. So you could still do a natural birth without an epidural. And at that point, because my water had broken, I was like, okay, I need contractions to start. So I did it. It didn't work. So then they gave it to me more. So, and like, I found out there's so many bad things about cytotech, like never, ever, ever do it. Maternal mortality rates have a lot to do with cytotech being given. And it's not even supposed to be used in that way. It's used off label for that, for inducing. It's an abortion pill. It's an abortive.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, I just like took an abortion pill to tell my son.
While you're in labor.
Like, get the fuck out, which is so messed up. Anyways, whatever. There's so many things I didn't like, but there's so many things I did like. And this is one of them. However, the hospital did the heel prick test 4 days later after we came home. They state this is a state test. So the state calls and said, you have to go to Chalk Hospital. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go to Chalk Hospital. Right. They're like, call my pediatrician. They're like, you need to send them to Chalk Hospital immediately. They told us the metabolic condition that he tested for and that they needed to retest him. And then I was like, you're telling me this metabolic condition is very dangerous if your son gets sick, but you're going to stick me in a room with a sick child. I have a 4-day-old infant and the child that you want to stick me in the room with overnight is like 7 years old and sick and coughing in the same small room. Right. So I told the hospital, absolutely not. I have the resources. I will see the best doctor for this ASAP, like in the morning, because this was like late at night at this point. I'm not
bringing my newborn.
I went to the ER, but I was like, I'm not staying the night for this. Like, I will come back in the morning to see your metabolic doctors. They're like, they literally called CPS on me.
No.
As a new mom of a 4-day-old infant.
Because you wouldn't admit your
they
son.
stuck me in a room. They didn't tell me they called CPS on me. They stuck me in a room. They said, let me see if I can find a room for you. Eric and I were just sitting there. I was like trying to nurse because at this point they're like, you need babies can go into ketosis really quickly. So I luckily had milk because at that point, not everyone has milk. Right. But it came because I was like, I had no problem nursing. And they wanted me to like bottle feed him, to give him formula. I said no. So they hated me because they were like, she's a difficult mom. And I was just like, oh my God.
I'm trying to nurse my baby. Breast milk, the best thing for him.
At that point, I just remembered that story of what can happen when you're advocating for your children and all of a sudden you look like a crazy mom, but you're just trying to do what's best for your child, which is what the hospitals are trying to do too.
So full circle, it comes back to this Facebook group of this mom
I was like,
saying,
oh my God,
don't put my son on
CPS
chemo.
comes and they're like, we were going to do a medical hold on him. But
Shut up.
They came and they said, because Eric walks out of the room and he's like, sheriff's here.
Did
They
you
called the cops. Oh, I was like,
I just got
freaking
chills.
out. The sheriff was there. I was still bleeding.
You're
Like,
4 days postpartum.
Yeah, I was still bleeding. I couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. Like I couldn't take care of myself properly as being newly postpartum. I'm like sitting there for hours in this room with no windows, just fluorescent lighting, just like shut in a closet, basically. So tiny. And Eric was like, opens the door, sees the sheriff, and he's like, the sheriff's here. And then they come and they say, we have found a room. All they say is, we found a room. Are you going to stay? And I'm like, yeah, that's all I wanted. Like
because
my own
you didn't
private
want
room.
a private, yes.
And then CPS comes and then says, hey, interviews me and then says, luckily you decided to stay or else we were going to do a medical hold on it.
What is a medical hold?
Like they were going to basically take him and decide what his...
Shut
yes.
up. Away from the mom.
Yes.
That is so scary.
They can do that at a hospital. They can do that. You need it. Everyone needs to be careful. In California, they can do that. There are other states they can do that, but California is really gnarly. So then I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? You know, I'm such a progressive mom. Like, I just feel like this is just not what I had in mind for the way the government was going to like intervene and treat a new postpartum mom. We talk about how there needs to be better access to healthcare and like all these things. And here I am
getting CPS called on you.
CPS called on me. Get this. So then they say you have to have a crib for us to, I mean, this is even, I still had to stay the night, but she was just informing me, before we release you tomorrow, if you get released tomorrow, you have to have a crib. Do you have a crib? And I was like, I have like so many cribs. Come to my house. Like, I will show you. I have one on each level. Like, yeah. But I was like, I'm into co-sleeping, you know? So yes. I was already planning on co-sleeping. Luckily, I had cribs or else like
They came to your house?
They came to my house.
CPS did?
Yes.
To make sure you're fit.
And I couldn't be there to show them my house because I had to be at the hospital. So my sister and my mother-in-law were at my house showing them our home before we were able to
for a child.
Yes.
Oh my God.
At that moment, I was like, I'm very blessed. I have a beautiful home. It looks like the child will be well taken care of. I have the resources. They had to look in our fridge to make sure we had enough food. But then I was like, you guys, like, what if someone didn't? What if someone didn't go grocery shopping? It looked like shit. And
what if the crib wasn't set up yet? What if it was a bassinet that somebody was dropping off? There's all these different...
It's not a requirement as like parents to have a crib.
No.
It's not. Like, that's not illegal. And so for them to have said that is crazy. So that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like women need to advocate for themselves. The second time I had a baby, so my daughter, I did a home birth, but then I had declined antibiotics because I was GBS positive. But you can't do that if you have a birth midwife at a hospital. But because I had a home birth, I could decline antibiotics. So I declined antibiotics. And after the home birth, they were like, she has heavy breathing. We're nervous if she has GBS, like if she could contracted
your daughter, Grace, the baby.
Yes. My midwife was like kind of nervous because she started breathing heavy after 6 hours. And so she was like, we need to go to the hospital. I was like, no, don't do this to me. Like, I can't go back. That's like so much trauma. I can't. But I was like, okay, like I'm doing it. And Eric was like, do not open your mouth. Like, do not say anything.
Just shut up.
Don't say anything. You go in there, you just have them check her and that's it. And I'm like crying. Like, I don't even want to go and I don't think we need to go. And Eric's like, we're still going. So we go and they're like, protocol is we have to give her antibiotics. And I was like, no. And Eric just like looks at me. I'm like, there's literally nothing wrong with her. Ever since I've been here, her heart rate is normal. Tell me what's wrong with her.
Why would they give her
Nothing's wrong. I had a beautiful birth. Like, just because I had GBS, but then I was negative before giving birth, but just the potential. So I was like, you can do blood work on her, but I will not allow you to give her antibiotics prophylactically because you think that maybe she has it. You have to show me in her blood work that she has it. Like, it takes 24 hours. It takes 24 hours. And I was like, I will stay here the whole time. I will choose to stay here until you show me. And then they did her urine test and blood test, and it wasn't in there. And I was like, I prevented my daughter from having to just take antibiotics because that's just their protocol. Because it's not
as basically being a day old, not
basically what happens. And I understand, like, you're treating so many people. You can't offer individualized healthcare, but as parents, we need to be the ones advocating and saying, this is not individualized healthcare. This is just your hospital protocol just because it's easier for
protocol.
you.
It's here's the routine, here's the protocol. It's one size fits all.
It's one size fits all. And that wasn't the case for her. And I was like, listen, if she takes this antibiotic, she has a more likelihood of getting C. diff from the hospital. And that's going to complicate so many other things. C. diff is a bacterial infection. Why do that to her as an infant when we might not even need to give it to her and she's breathing normal and she has no symptoms?
The holiday season is here and we are all looking for ways to spend and stress less. And you guys, I have found the way to do that. I recently used HelloFresh and let me tell you, my mind was absolutely blown. So first of all, it was all delivered to my door. It was all pre-portioned ingredients. I told Drew that I was going to start cooking dinner at 5 o'clock and he didn't believe me that we would be ready to eat by 5:30. I was ready to eat by 5:25. I also cooked so that it was enough for 4 portions. So Drew and I were able to eat dinner, and then we had enough for leftovers for lunch the next day, and the meal was absolutely amazing. It tasted so fresh. Drew was truly blown away. We are now HelloFresh people.
This is honestly the perfect time of year to doing any sort of meal kit. And really, I think as moms, we're all looking for ways to spend and stress less. So why not just have your dinner sent to your door? Everything's in there and it's so much less than takeout. I don't know about you guys, but I spend so much on takeout every week that this is one thing I am investing in for the holiday season. Delicious meals, straight and fresh to your door.
And listen, we have an insane deal for you. Get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freecampchaos. Applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/freecampchaos.
But I think parents are scared to advocate because
100%.
they think that doctors and nurses are going to say like, well, we've gone to school. We know all this.
What do you know? Dr. Google?
What was like the reaction from doctors and nurses all this time when you're like,
they were so upset.
I feel like you are one of one who probably came in. They're
they were so
crazy
upset.
in room.
Hence why they called CPS.
Yeah, the first time they called CPS, because I was like,
I'm not doing this.
I was a bitch, kind of, because I automatically was like defensive and I didn't know what they were capable of either, right? So I was just kind of like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to get in a room with it. The second time, I was way more well-spoken. And I just kept my cool because I knew what they were capable of, but I also wasn't going to back down as a mom. So I just had to play my cards right. And when I did that, he looked at me. He's like, I'm so mad right now. Like, he literally told me, I'm so upset. I'm so mad. And he did what I wanted because he knew I brought up really good points.
You had it valid.
So it's about being informed.
You have to be educated,
It's really about being educated on the fact that it's not individualized care and pushing back on protocol and saying, we want the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like just meeting them where they're at. It's like anything in business, in life. Like I wasn't diplomatic the first time. I became a mom and I realized what I need to do. I need to do this with my 3-year-old. So I'm going to treat this guy like my 3-year-old too.
We have to come to an agreement.
Yes.
We both want the same thing. Let's figure out how we're going to get there.
We want her to be safe. You think I don't want her to be safe? I want her to be safe. I know you want her to be safe. But remember, if she takes antibiotics, luckily the antibiotic conversation isn't crazy anymore, right?
Well, I feel like so often we can get into this antibiotic conversation because I remember being young and like, if I was ever sick, it was like, oh, mommy, I need a Z-Pack.
Yeah.
Like that sounds so weird to say out loud, but like I have probably had 10,
Me too.
12, 13, maybe
Of
15
course.
Z-Packs as an adolescent. And you just think, oh, I've got a little thing. I need a Z-Pack. It's going to make me feel better. But then when you wake up to wellness and you realize what it does to our gut, and then your gut controls everything else in your body.
Yeah.
And I think until becoming a mom, for me at least, it wasn't apparent. And I was 30. I'm like, I'm sorry, what am I doing to my kids by giving this antibiotic? And there's like barely a little fever. Why? There's no ear infection. It's just slightly inflamed. So what do you do about the antibiotic conversation with your babies?
I have never given an antibiotic to either of them.
Either.
They're 6 and 3. They've never had an ear infection. They've had like stuff in their ear coming out.
Like inflamed a little bit.
Well, actually there was this one time after Truth was sick, like a bunch of just earwax came out. It was crazy.
So how do you avoid the
an ear
antibiotics?
infection, if that makes sense? Well, I'm also like, I have an ozone machine in my house, and ozone is a natural antibacterial. So I just do ozone therapy with them. And I have a team in place. Here in Orange County, we're just super lucky. We have wonderful doctors. We're really close to Los Angeles. I have their pediatrician, but I don't really ask him much about it because they both happen to have the same metabolic condition. I have, Zach Bush took us on as their patient, and he closed his practice in Virginia, but he's like just kind of a text away. And so what I did when he closed his practice was I connected him with Dr. Sears, who I see. And I was like, here, I'm building my team. You guys connect. Dr. Sears, here, Zach is going to fill you in on what's the deal when it comes to their metabolic condition. Outside of that, I'm still going to go see a chiropractor, their chiropractic doctors. My family physician is now also helping me with my children if stuff comes up. And I always tell people, like, the doctors you choose someone who is someone like, not just you confide in only when something goes wrong, but who stays up to date on your whole life. Mm-hmm. If you have stress at home, if you're dealing with, like, for example, lawsuits and all sorts of things that happen when you're, doing high profile business stuff, like, you want someone who's understanding, like, your family's going through divorce. You have this lawsuit. You want to go on a hike with this doctor. Like, they're your friend, because then it comes through in your blood work. Or if, like, there's weird things in your kids' blood work, like, I've only done blood work on them once, and it's because I needed to. I wouldn't advocate for, like, just all of a sudden getting blood work done on your kids all the time. It can be scary, because what if something comes up and you're like, I don't know. Blood work is just like a snapshot of that particular moment in time.
Yeah, the next day it can be completely different.
Yes. Yeah. And so when we do that, it could sometimes be a disservice. So
because then it's like something comes up and you're like, oh, I have this. This must be. Someone told me I had Hashimoto's, and another doctor's like, you had a blip in a blood work. We did it the next week, and it was a Hashi moment for a second.
Yes.
You do not
Hashi
have
moment. I love it.
Hashimoto's. Like, but it was such a, remember I told you, I'm like, I have Hashimoto's. So it was like, and then I was attached to this autoimmune thing that I didn't have. And then your body, you're like telling your body you have something when you maybe don't.
Exactly. Right? And you can't go into that miracle mindset of healing. And anyways, when it comes to antibiotics, I haven't given it to them. I haven't needed to. Like, we haven't had a situation where I needed to. Obviously, there was that situation in the hospital right away, but I advocated for it because I knew she didn't need it. And then I would, if I were someone who's like listening in, who's given antibiotics, doesn't want to necessarily anymore, because a lot of times antibiotics are given prophylactically, and people need to know this because they don't know. It's really to prevent. So for the flu, for example, that's a viral infection, but they still give you an antibiotic to prevent secondary infections, but it's just for prevention. So what else can we do to prevent rather than go to an antibiotic? There's so many things. Like, I talk about oregano oil for the ear.
Will your kids do oregano oil?
They haven't needed to.
They haven't needed to. Okay.
I mean, like, I'll mask it in something. It's been in like little flu shot type things, but not like consistently. Yeah. Typically, like, ozone has been really great for our family. If anyone's interested, you can go on like a website. I can send you the website and look for practitioners that offer it. I had to do it really early on with my daughter. I wasn't as like, I don't know when I got it. I think I got it after she was born, but my machine. But before that, I would see this physician like on a weekly basis. And then I felt like I gained enough experience at that point to get my own machine.
Well, now there's salt rooms that are all ozone therapy. Like, there's I took the kids there when they were sick, and it's like their sinuses just drain. And it's like it literally cleans out their system.
And salt rooms can prevent pneumonia. So these are things that we need to know so that it doesn't.
But it's a luxury. It sounds terrible to say this. When you Google something, Google, how do I fix this?
Yeah.
My son has a runny nose. My son has a cough, whatever it may be. these are like luxury things to know. It's not like the first thing that comes up. It's like, this is after research, after trial and error.
Yeah.
So as much as I feel like for moms, they want to do what's right. They trust so much in their doctors. They're doing the antibiotics because that's what the doctor says.
Yeah.
They're alternating Motrin and Tylenol because they want to get the fever down. It's this is like taboo.
Yeah, it is.
It's sad to say, but it is taboo.
And I feel like I'm so anti like any sort of pharmaceutical medication, like to a crazy extent. But at the same time, like I had a situation, I had to give Grace a steroid when she got COVID, and it was really scary. She was really, really young. She got COVID, and it was really sad listening to her. And Dr. Sears was like, I went and saw him, and I would like text him what she would sound like. And he was like, honestly, 99.9% of the time, you don't need this. I'll give this to you just if in the middle of the night you feel like you need it. And I was like, okay, I'll just take it to have.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use it. He's the one that told me 99.9% of the time, you don't need it. And I was impressed with him, honestly, because I feel like you would think that, especially listening to her at the time, I was scared. And I'm someone who's like, I will do every other thing. But I tried every other thing and it did not work. And I gave it to her. And I felt like in that moment, I was just like, I'm so grateful to have this.
Mm-hmm.
And I will still use something if I feel like at the end of the day, I need it.
Yeah.
But I think it's like one of those things where it's the very, 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 very last resort after doing every single natural thing for a few days, you know? And so I feel like that can give people some ease too. It's like, we're not saying it's there. It's going to be there. It's going to be pushed every second. So why not try the other stuff first?
This may be really controversial, but I feel like it's lazier.
Yes.
To just be like, oh, well, here, this is a quick fix.
Yes.
And moms can say, oh, but it's here. And this is why the doctors are pushing it. But it's like, okay, well, try the other things.
Yeah.
Well,
before.
I think even more so than lazier is like, because for me, I'm like the person that
she's like, don't call me lazy.
No. Because I do it more for if my son is like, if I see him like bright red from a fever, I'm like, how do I relieve this as soon as possible? I personally don't know other methods other than like, here's a little half thing of Tylenol, or here's a little half thing of Motrin. So I think more so than lazy, it's just like moms don't know about this because all we've been raised to do is like, well, just give them Motrin and then they can sleep. And you're like, well, and they need sleep because that's going to help them feel better the next day. So I feel like we just don't know enough unless like you two who are so deep in the wellness world. But for someone like me whose my toes are just in it, I just don't know like what an alternative
I'll tell you.
So give it to me.
There's like a Reddit on apparently someone saying they called CPS on me because I didn't give Tylenol to my kid for his fever. And now he's like apparently, according to Reddit, super delayed and like can't talk or something like that.
Well, we can say truth is not.
I'm like, oh my God, this is insane.
You know you've made it when there's a Reddit on you.
I was like, my sister told me, she's like, oh my God, you need to read this. I was like, this is crazy. It's, the things that you share.
Yeah.
I mean, people.
Well, that's what's so scary. You open yourself
I'm gonna
up to
share
sharing
this
stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to share this. So I feel like, I've never given Truth Tylenol or Motrin for it, but homeopathy I've used. And even, I'm not saying homeopathy is bad. I love it. And I like use it all the time. But I realized where does this fear come from? This fear of fevers. It's crazy. Like we just, as moms, we don't want to see our kids uncomfortable, obviously. So we have to work through that discomfort because we need to teach them that it's okay to be uncomfortable and it's okay. It goes back to the ear infection thing too. Sometimes it's like, this is part of them learning about their body is it's okay to sometimes be uncomfortable and we're going to do things to help alleviate those symptoms. But we need to also support the body in writing things out too. Because when we give the Tylenol and the Motrin, we're preventing their body from doing its thing, from learning to do its thing. And so heal. Later on in life, it doesn't know how to heal from cancer, right? So we need to, as moms, stop being afraid of fevers. Fevers are a really good thing. It means that their bodies are working. It means that basically it's just really simple. You're just trying to heat up the body to a point where that bacteria or whatever it is that it's trying to get rid of is killed off naturally by the body's temperature. And then right away, like when they break their fever, it's like the best feeling in the whole world.
That's why it's
right?
called breaking a fever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the more we give Tylenol, Motrin, I'm going to talk about homeopathy too, because I've done it all. So I started with, not the Tylenol, Motrin, but I've done all the homeopathy things. And also like, okay, I need to cool them down because they're uncomfortable because they're too hot. So now I'm going to stick them in the bathtub. And like,
oh, you're even against that?
Yes.
Like cold compresses?
Let me tell you what, unless they're like really gnarly, because let me tell you.
When you say really gnarly, like what, above 103?
Well, yeah. But at some point, I haven't had
She's like, don't call CPS.
Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you something that I experienced. I started to do that. Like I'd be like, oh my God, he has a fever. And like, I'm so scared. And also with his condition, then I have to feed him more and he doesn't want to eat. And like, it's a lot with their condition too, which gets me like really riled up. And thank God my husband's calm. He's like, they're fine. But I realized it takes longer to break a fever because the more you put them in the bath, a lukewarm bath to cool down their temperature, the longer it's going to take. Yes. So this is what Mexicans do. They just like, in their culture,
they wrap them
up and then they help the body. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to put sweats on my kid, but I'm going to put
you're not going to swaddle them in a
lightweight onesie that covers their whole body, very, very lightweight fabric that's natural so they can breathe, not polyester. So we need to like look at their, the labels, the materials that their clothes are made out of and make sure it's breathable, but it covers their body and it supports them in getting hotter so they break it. 9 times out of 10, it's just one night.
Yeah.
And my sister started doing it with her kids because she was just like, okay, I'm going to try it.
But I do feel like you're playing roulette in some case. And it's scary for a parent when you're watching your kid. I remember when Zane, he had roseola and, I think that's like a pathway for every kid. But it's so scary. It's like, okay, what this fever is getting to 103, 103.5. And my doctor said to me, she said, look, don't be afraid of giving Tylenol and Motrin because I don't want you as a mom to witness your kid go through a seizure.
Yeah.
And which was a very valid concern. I'm like, here you go.
Yeah.
I could not as a mom sit back and watch that happen.
No.
So I very well was like, okay.
And I think that's
I'm going to
like
wash
your
my hands
comfort
of
zone.
this. It was my comfort zone.
No, not just yours. We're all playing with our comfort zone. And yes, at some point, 103.5, that's really high. You did everything you could. You watched it, you monitored it, and then you're like, okay, this is dangerous. Or like for me, I've witnessed my son kind of have a febrile seizure and it's like not dangerous. I know this sounds really crazy.
True, had a seizure?
Twice he's had it.
From a fever?
Yes.
See,
and I'm not,
scary.
Okay, this sounds crazy. So like, obviously I don't want to be like, okay, CPS, but it's not because he didn't go to a 103.5. So sometimes, it's different.
It can happen. Yeah.
It can happen because their spike in temperature happens really fast.
Right.
So it's like 0 to 100, or whatever. Obviously not 0 to 100, but so that's when I've witnessed it in him. So even if you were to give your kid, like be someone who was willing to, that could still happen to you. That's happened to me. His temperature wasn't high enough and it only happened like once or twice, but then he's fine. He's regulated. I watch him and then he breaks the fever. But I've learned what his normal is and I've become comfortable with it. Mm. I've never had to monitor a fever over 103 or 103.5. Granted, I don't use a thermometer. I use I go based off of how he feels and what he looks like. And also like, is he hydrated? Is he peeing? Like all of the other things. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily go based off of like the temperature because I feel like he's never gone that high.
I feel like
so you don't know his number when he has
I don't
a fever.
know. Like it could be like 102.
Yeah, like I put my cheek
I'm
to
like,
it.
this is a fever. Yes. Yeah. Like I've learned old school ways. Like I had a friend whose pediatrician told her like, put your tongue to their forehead. And if it feels like crazy,
hot, then you know it's hot.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a perfect conversation before all of our kids are like back in school.
I know.
6 seasons coming.
I don't want to sound crazy.
You sound crazy.
I know. But the febrile seizure thing that I've experienced is not because they've gone that high. Anyone listening, if you happen to witness, it could just be like what happened to me.
Spike.
The rapid spike. And so I like had to learn to be okay with it. But it wasn't like a seizure where he's foaming out of the mouth either. It's just they get stiff and they kind of like shake a little, but it's not like a crazy seizure that you're thinking. You're just like, oh wow, the body is like working But then in my experience, he just heals so much more quickly and his body is learning how to work through it. I haven't given him homeopathy for a fever in so long, but not that I wouldn't. I love belladonna. You can give belladonna and it helps a lot. But I've noticed that I break the fever much more quickly when I don't do it. That's just like what I want to say. But I'm more comfortable because I have a 6-year-old that's had a fever so many times.
You've had experiences.
Yeah.
I think that is, though, a doable perspective is to teach your kid that, like, yes, your body is going to go through some things where it doesn't, like my son is getting growing pains in the back of his leg.
Oh my gosh, that stage.
And I say, like, mommy had those and that's how I became this big woman that I am. And daddy had them and that's how daddy's big and strong. Like, this is part of the body. So I think maybe.
And he's voicing it to you.
Yeah, he's
They,
leg
like, cry.
hurts, mommy.
Yeah.
And I don't you remember
Have you
growing pains?
No,
growing
Zane
up?
hasn't done that yet.
Oh, and
How
I
old
say,
is
where
he?
does your leg
3.
hurt?
Yeah. It could happen like
God.
around
But
this
you know,
age.
Miller, like he just grew
Yeah,
really
he
tall.
grew
And I say,
fast.
where does it hurt? And he'll point to like the back of his knee. I'm like, oh, those are growing pains. It helps you become big and strong.
I
But I
think
think
that conversation of like being in tune with your body, like it's something that like, I hate to say it, like our parents didn't really do that with us.
Well,
Right?
no, because they
were afraid. They were
We
just
didn't
like,
talk
oh
about
my
your
God,
body.
break the fever.
Yes.
Everything
this
in our
is dangerous.
bodies.
This can, anything and everything. Take the Z-Pack, get on birth control.
right.
Like you cannot be trusted managing your own body.
Yeah.
We cannot give you that freedom.
Well,
it's not their fault.
You know what, Nikki? I feel like even we can get into the food conversation. I feel like even when I think about food with me growing up, my dad was Southern. It was, you do not leave this table until your plate is clean.
Yeah.
You eat all of your food and you say, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Like it was very much more militant instead of like, listen to your body. How does that make you feel? Like you get this treat if you do this, like this bribery of candy.
Yeah.
You get to go to 7-Eleven if you like, there was like this reward system where with my kids, I'm like, okay, how does that make you feel when you're eating that?
Yeah.
Or, you know, if you're done and your body's telling you you're full, then you're done. Like, especially with my little Zozo, I'm like, girlfriend, you done?
yeah.
But
So
it's like
cute.
understanding your body and educating your kids and understanding what they're putting in their foods or what foods they're putting in their bodies, because I think that's one of the hardest things as a mom. Forget about medical intervention, forget about all, like the daily food struggle of what we are going to face with our kids going to school, going to other people's houses that have other foods. Like, how do you deal with this? Because the food to me is freaking me out because I truly believe we are what we eat.
Yeah. Okay. So it's really interesting because I've always been like, be intuitive with your food. I'm never going to push food on my kids. But I have to because of their medical condition.
Oh, God's
so
like,
I'm always
here
like,
you go.
Yeah. I'm like, oh God, I have to actually make them not finish their food, but get enough food. Because sometimes they just eat like, it's like a balance between making sure that they don't feel like you're forcing them and also making sure that they're eating enough with their activity level so that their mood stays stable. And I think it just goes back to like, the type of foods that they're eating, like kind of what you're saying. It's like, okay, for example, get your protein in, get a amount of carbs in that are clean, that are going to be sustaining them throughout the day with their activity levels too.
So not like sugary carbs in the morning.
Yeah. So like for me, I have to give my kids carbs because carbs are what keep them from going into ketosis. So I have to find carbs that are good for them, that are clean.
Well, and it's so easy to find like packaged carbs.
Yes.
Like
here's
anything,
processed or food. Candy or whatever it is, like most people in my situation are probably giving their kids like anything, candy, whatever, to stay alive. We do eggs in the morning, but they don't want toast all the time or whatever. So what we do is we get these like cassava flour tortillas, coyotas, and we make egg burritos. And those cassava flour tortillas, they just get these mini ones. There's mini burritos that we make. They're so easy to make. And it's just cassava flour and coconut oil. And it has enough carbs that's also going to sustain them and not make them crash. And so I've gotten really interested in like the combining of the food. And because I have to, I have to educate them. So I also just educate them. Hey, like we need to have a well-combined meal that's balanced. So that's kind of been interesting because my son listens really well. My daughter pushes back a lot. He will push back.
Wonder where she got that.
I know, right? I'm like, oh God.
But how do you avoid, like, I know obviously you have so much control over your kids right now. They're at this age of 3 and 6, but how are you going to avoid things like food dyes?
So we just don't, like, they just, it's so funny. A friend of mine the other day was like, you know how the Mormons, they just like go to regular public school, which we went to school with a lot of Mormons in Laguna.
We did?
Yeah, there's a lot of Mormons.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I just remember there's like a whole crew of them and I loved them. But anyways, so they all like, they didn't eat soda. They didn't partake in these things.
It's just their way of life.
It's their way of life. It is like their religion. That's their religion. For us, I feel like just starting from day one makes it so much easier and teaching them like, we don't eat this, not because we're better, but because we're not even saying the word, not because we're better, but like just educating them, like we don't do that because it doesn't make us feel good. And that prevents us from being healthy, and being healthy is what helps us like go on trips and do all these fun things as a family, and just like talking to them about it. I think the number one thing is talking to them about it and starting that conversation from day one.
Truth is already reading food labels.
Oh yeah. Like,
do they know like when they go to birthday parties?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because like, okay, we were just at Disneyland yesterday and we did the Oogie Boogie. So cute, so fun. I had to bring extra
everything. You have to bring everything.
I had to bring candy because it was, and as soon as he saw it, it was like literally like a drug where some moms are lucky where like her son could care less about candy. Zane was like, he's like, give me that bag. Give me that bag now. And I'm like trying to like put out the candy of like, okay, this is the other one. And he's like, I know this lollipop. I want that. Yeah. And it freaked me out because, and I don't want to be this mom where I'm like so psycho of like, well, there's red 40 in this and there's yellow 6 in this. And this is going to make you feel like that because I also feel like that's going to make him have anxiety. Yeah. So at some point, you have to have alternatives. You have to have alternatives. But it also does, like, I know you're part of RFK's camp where you're like, okay, we have to make America healthy again, which yes, but the food that we are putting in front of these kids is so terrible. Yeah. And it's just made to feel like this is the norm. This is what you do feed your kids.
And we just can't normalize it because I mean, I don't think, I think there's a way of doing it without causing them stress. And for some reason, maybe I just got lucky and my son doesn't push back. So it just, my daughter falls in line, I guess. I don't know. But they're just like, oh, can we eat this or can we not? But I mean, think about it. If there are like a bunch of kids out there with allergies, they know not to eat the thing that gives them whatever issue that they end up with when they have an allergic reaction to something. And I think if we come at it with that angle of because I'm sure there aren't kids that have like traumatic experiences because of their allergies. Like, oh my God, I can't have that. Like, I mean, they have traumatic experiences. Yeah. Like they just know, hey, like I won't eat that because it doesn't make me feel good.
It's like we don't eat pork. So it's like the same thing.
It's like, the same thing. Yeah. But because as moms, we feel bad basically because the norm has become poisoning our children with all this SHIT in our food. We feel bad because we go and we're like, I mean, I go to my dad's house and he shops at Trader Joe's and he has all this stuff and my sister doesn't care. She's like on the same page, but she's not at the same time. She's lazier
about it.
She doesn't, she's lazy. And she's like, whatever, I'm doing the screens, I'm doing this. It's just easier for me. And I'm like, own it. Like, that's fine. I'm not going to judge you. That's your thing. This is like, I'm obsessed with this. So it's different for me. And you're going to be obsessed with something else. And so for her, she's just like, whatever. So the grandparents get to give her kid all this stuff. My kids are literally right there and they can't eat it. And they don't.
That's hard though.
But it's not because
your kids are fine with it.
My kids don't care. Yeah. And I really don't think I didn't stress them out about it. But I just taught them from day one. And I don't know if it's because I kind of looped it in with their medical condition. Mm-hmm. So somehow I was just like, oh, like we eat balance and this isn't balance and it hurts, like it can hurt our body. And we want to, I don't know, just like be healthy and it doesn't make us feel good. Mm-hmm. And it just works. But I also always have an alternative. And sometimes, unfortunately, that alternative is fruit. Like, that's just not great. But my kids eat so much chocolate. It's crazy. And I'm like obsessed with chocolate and they get to eat all the chocolate. It's not that they don't eat, it's like the chocolate.
They get plenty of sweets.
They get the date chocolate at Mother's. There's
so many options now.
There's so many options. We're so lucky. They get date chocolate with, almond butter or peanut butter or whatever. And they also get like other stuff that's not date sweetened, but it's honey sweetened or it's coconut sugar. That's still sugar.
Yeah.
And they're still eating it, but I'm just not giving them the stuff with.
You're not giving them a Snickers bar.
Yeah. I'm not giving them Snickers bar. And I just I can't do it. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, I think it can be overwhelming for someone listening, trying to be like, oh shit. I give my kids so much bad things. Hello. But I think there's like certain steps that we can take to start, like just changing small things. I do think, or I'm learning now that my son just started school, it's like the morning is so hectic.
Oh my God.
I mean, we cook him breakfast every morning, but by the time it's lunch and then dinner, you're like, I'm so sick of cooking for you and you're only going to eat half of it. So like, what are small things that we can do or look for in ingredients where you can say like, okay, this probably isn't good, or I can switch this out?
Yeah. Okay. So the number one thing to get rid of, in my opinion, is canola oil and seed oils. I think canola oil is like the worst thing ever. I got rid of that a decade ago, and I'm like so happy about this conversation. There's, so aside from the seed oils and trying to like replace that with butter, all extra virgin olive oil that's cold pressed and organic, coconut oil that's organic. I would say, the red dyes and the sugar. Just like
any artificial dye,
any artificial, like even artificial sugars too. If you're like, oh, I'm not going to give them real sugar, I'm going to give them like
aspartame.
Yes. Of course. It's like, don't do that. Just teach their body to eat real whole foods. And I love bento boxes for that purpose. Like when we go on road trips, I bring the bento boxes, and I'm talking like an hour to LA, because we go to LA a lot, and they get their bento boxes they love the like little compartmentalized things, and they like, I mean, my kids like cucumber, they like fennel, they like.
So you got very lucky with that.
I know.
But you're introducing it, I'm sure, at a very young age.
And I think that's when you're asking this question, I'm like, I don't envy the situation of having to like change it, because I see in my own kids the little changes that we have to make, how difficult it is. Like my son has something called an ALF in his mouth right now. ALF is this like incredible, I don't know, it's like this device basically. It's almost like an expander, but it's not. It just like helps bring everything into place. And you can do
orthodontics.
It's orthodontics. And like this Dr. Nordstrom down in San Diego, he invented it. And my dentist in Calabasas, Dr. Sammy Sherry, she's a holistic integrative dentist and orthodontist for kids. She offers it, and it's great, but adults can do it. I want to do it so badly.
To
just
open the palate?
Yes. And he has it. So he can't have certain foods that he's used to.
Stuck.
Yes. And he's like, oh my gosh, like I can't have carrots, or I can't have whatever now.
Poor kid.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously caramel, sticky things, whatever. But they were going through a list. He's like, I don't eat that. I don't eat that. But the things that he does eat and he does love, he likes, I mean, I give him popcorn, like organic popcorn. His teacher gives it to him. It's not my favorite snack that he eats, but he eats it. And I love it too. It's so good.
And there's things that he can't eat now because of it. So you see behavioral changes that are like, how do I go past this?
So I noticed it might not be the same thing as like the sugar addiction thing, but it still is the equivalent of like taking something that they're used to away from them.
Right.
And I can see how difficult that is. So it is hard, but then like they still get over it and get used to it when they're young. Yes. They move on. Like I think it's good for them to not
the
get
younger, the better.
Yes.
The
so
younger,
like, hopefully
the better.
You can start this when you're young, but like I'm living at my mom's house right now and it's like so much fun. The intergenerational living is like actually the best thing ever. I was not planning
for doing this.
I was not planning on staying there for longer than 2 weeks. So literally everything I own is in storage. All I've been doing is buying clothes because I'm like, I've only had 2 weeks worth of clothes. Like I have to, like I all my stuff is in storage at the mover's storage. Like I don't have access to it. But now we've been there for like 4 months because we're like looking to find a home. And anyways, like my mom doesn't eat the same as us. She tries, but she doesn't. She has like all this stuff. Like, I don't know. We make it work.
It's funny though. I feel like you and your husband have to be on the same page of what you're feeding your kids.
There is the statistic that says that the kids emulate what the dad eats.
Oh, fuck.
And that's really where it comes from.
Well, no, I think I think it's
Cheetos.
Like, Cheetos. You saw him yesterday. I'm like, well, he put a Cheeto in Zane's mouth and Zane spit it out. He's like, I don't want that. I'm like, thank God.
Yeah.
I got lucky with my kids so far, but I do think that there is that something in them that like my husband will eat processed food. My husband will eat crap. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, this is your shelf up here. Do not let the kids see your shelf. Do not put that in their mouth. But I think that is so true, because I think as much as I push healthy food on them, like there is something in my son that's like candy.
Yeah.
What, sweets?
No, totally.
Yeah.
And I really think it just goes back to our decisions as parents. Like if we're eating that
They
way,
emulate the behavior.
And so I mean, before I had Truth, we got rid of our TV in our house because
You have no TV.
You have no TV.
No. We don't have a TV.
Oh my
and
God.
I literally
you would
looked at
hate
Eric. I mean, God bless his soul. Like,
No
I was
games.
like, Eric, oh no. Oh my God. Eric had to get rid of his video games when we moved
No,
in
but like
together.
no football games.
Oh.
Like he's like,
No, so I was like, I mean, go somewhere else to watch them. Like, we'll watch them maybe at my sister's I don't have this like stressful thing around screens really, because I just don't have one at my house. So if they like happen to be around one at my sister's or my mom's house, like, cause we're in the ADU and then like randomly, then I'm like, whatever, really, I don't care.
but you're not going to dinner and
on a
sitting down and
day-to-day-
handing them a screen.
No. And on a day-to-day basis, they just don't have that. We buy books. Like we read them so many books and they enjoy it and they love it. And when they're young, they love that anyways. Yeah. But when I was like, Eric, we have to get rid of the TV, because if we don't do it, then they will just emulate what we do. And it's just not fair for us to say, you can't watch it. And so he literally cried when we were he was crying. And I like looked over at him because the day we were getting rid of the TV, I look over and he's like, tears coming down his face. And I was like, wait.
That would be me.
There's
Eric,
not one in your bedroom?
Are you crying, Eric? And he's like, yeah, just leave me alone. I'm doing it, but I need like to let it go.
I need to mourn this. Wait, so not in your bedroom either?
No.
So
what do you do before bed?
I mean,
do you
it's
guys
just so
talk
bad.
before bed, or
Do you talk to your husband?
Yeah.
or read? Or what do you do before bed?
I mean, we'll still like, we have laptops like here and there. We'll maybe put something on, but no, I mean, we just like hang out. I try and do like puzzles. I don't know. Like we don't really like stay up to like watch something.
No, truly.
Yeah. We like try. I mean, I think it's a really good practice of like trying to connect.
Oh,
but of course we have
is.
like, I mean, I try and work at night. Like, it's not like I'm trying to just like every single night. I'm like, hey, Eric, like, let's talk. Like, no, you just got the kid down. You're freaking pissed. It took so long.
Right.
And you're like,
and you turn on the
worst
TV
mood ever. You're like, and then you come out, you complain about them and how long it took. And then you talk about like the next day. I mean, how late are you staying up? You know, I don't know.
I like watch a show for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But if
he will like
that's shocking.
I like can't even talk.
Every
it's so
night
shocking.
though for 45 minutes?
Every night for
No
45
way.
minutes. Like right now we're into like a cooking show. So we watch like the Bobby Flay cooking show before bed. But like for my husband, like the TVs were up in our house before the furniture was there. Like he is so
You have a TV on each wall in your house.
each wall, like in our bedroom, like on Sundays at 9:55, it's like a countdown until NFL Red Zone is on.
That's
like
fun,
we are,
you know, like I think that
TV.
it's fun to have that as a family. It's my husband. Okay, so he got into Formula One. He's obsessed. So like that's the one thing where he's like, he can watch the highlights with the kids, the 6-minute highlight, you know, and we'll do little things like that, but we just don't have one. So it's not top of mind. It's not something I have to say, no, we can't turn on, or we're not going to just like ask to watch something every night. It's just so much easier to take that out of the equation. That's just what I realized. And because it's out of the equation, it's not like they can't watch something, but when they do, it's minimal and here and there, so minimal that it doesn't even affect
phase them.
But no, it does phase them. Like they're like Zane with the candy. Like they are obsessed. Don't get me wrong. But it's not like they're crying every single day because they can't watch something.
Yeah.
It's just that when it's on, they're hooked for sure.
Which is also
it's
very
like
scary.
that.
Yeah.
But and you're like, oh, I wish that they didn't need to be like that because my sister's kid could care less.
No, we go to dinner with our kids very often, as do you. And I will be honest, like we don't bring out like a tablet or a phone right away. But if it's at that point where we are trying to finish a meal and it's like somebody's squirming, I'm like, here you go. Yeah. You are going to watch this. Like, and I will slow down the speed, which I highly recommend anybody on
smart.
YouTube. You could go down to like 0.75. So it's just slower.
Smart.
And I don't have like the very, like, they're not watching Coco Melon.
Yeah.
But fall victim to that.
It's a tool.
And I will own it.
But it is a tool, right?
It's a tool. It's a crutch.
I think it's a tool. I use it as a tool. I don't use it at dinner as a tool, but I use it when they're doing ozone as a tool, you know? And so it's not like I don't do
ozone. Replenish your body.
Like my kids like ozone, like whatever I can do, you know?
Yes.
But they just started watching stuff on the airplane. Like they didn't used to do that.
Yeah.
It's, you know, so it's not like
really quick. I just wanted to, do you guys go out to dinner?
Do you eat at restaurants?
We did. I don't know. I guess not. Not
Do you
really.
cook,
Right,
or does
because
Eric
you
cook?
have to be
Eric
really
cooks.
Oh, so
I cook. I help, but he does all the like main stuff because I don't like making steak or anything like that.
Yeah. Because
So
I feel
he's
like
like the cook.
that would be really hard because now you're relying on, you're hoping that they're not using any set of oils or
when
anything.
you go to a restaurant, you can say,
you can
cook my
say.
food and
We
butter.
go to True Food. We go to Parakeet. We go to Fermentation Farm. We go to
all the good healthy places.
all the good healthy
But
places
even
around
if you
here.
go to like Bandera R&D, you could, like any restaurant, you could say, please cook my meat and butter.
Yeah, you can.
They may look at you like you're crazy, but
Yeah,
you say,
but
but the problem is you don't know where that meat is. It's not grass-fed, grass-finished
Totally.
meat.
Right.
It's like, it's coming from
it's just
Bill
like,
Gates' farm.
That's why it's nice. It's like, you know, you can do what you can at home. And when you go out, you just know like it's not going to be the best meat. It probably has been treated with all these things.
Like it's pumped with hormones and antibiotics.
And the butter too, but at least that's better.
Here's my own meat.
Yeah.
Can you please cook this?
I know. I'm like, yeah. But I'm crazy. I go and ask them if like their animal at the farmer's market in Laguna, I ask them if their animals were artificially inseminated or if they actually like
it's just an IVF.
Yeah. And because that's like another thing that they do, even when it's grass fed and all the good things, you know?
They're like, I'm sorry,
But
crazy
so
lady. Please leave the farmer's
There's
market.
levels, right? But
I think the biggest thing
also-
after
yeah.
you have to not stress about it so much.
Yes.
Like you seem like I'm going to own this level of crazy and like it is what it is.
But I
Like
also, don't care.
you can't you can't obsess about it and you can't stress so much of like where if it fuels you, and I do it to a level of like where it fuels me, and then like when I feel like it's like, oh my God, it's starting to give me anxiety, I'm like, I will be done with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this away and we are going to bring out Miss Rachel.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
good.
But it's so good to hear her perspective, even for someone like me who's, you know, I'm not on the opposite end of you, but I'm just like stepping into wellness. It's like, oh, wow. Now this conversation will always be in the back of my head. So like when I am reaching for something
You
at
can
the
always
grocery
text
store,
me.
yeah, it's
right.
like, oh, wait. Let's put that back and look for something else. Like it's helpful to hear, even though I could never be like you, just because that's like I could not live without a TV or any of those things. But I could try to like do certain things to live a healthier lifestyle.
for sure.
And that's why I think like conversations like this are important.
I want to talk about the fullest and how you started this and what actually, not even how you started this, of what saffron means to you, because this is like so much bigger than just us as like women and adults, like even for children, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
So
so
let's
great
talk
for children.
about saffron.
I love it. Obviously, I grew up with it just being Persian, and my mom had this crazy obsession with it more than any other Persian person I've ever encountered. And like growing up, she would it was like our rice was so yellow. Everything was so much more saffron than when I'd go to a friend's house. And I guess when I was really little, had no filter, I'd be like, why don't they have
Where's
enough
your saffron?
Yeah.
Saffron is very coveted though.
Yes.
It's a coveted spice.
It is, because it's super expensive and really hard to it's not hard to grow, but it's hard to harvest. It's like there's only per flower, you can only get 3 strands of saffron, and you need a therapeutic dose to feel its benefits. And typically they're not using therapeutic doses in their food. And so anyways, like I grew up with it, and then my mom used to keep this vial of it in the fridge. So, cause typically with saffron, you have to like grind it down and then you mix it with like hot water. You make this vial so that you're not wasting it. You're not just putting threads in your meal. You're using this extract that you do like the drops of it in your—
Super potent.
Yeah. And, but it's still not the therapeutic dose, which is interesting. But I would go in and just drink the whole vial. And my mom would freak out. She would just be like, oh my God, you're going to die from a laughing attack. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, saffron makes you laugh, but if you have too much, you'll die. And that was like her way of getting me to just like
Stop
lay
taking it,
off, as moms do. And that stuck with me forever. It's like you saying this like conversation, there's just certain things that stick with you. And I went on to just culinary school for plant-based food. And obviously it's just been part of my life and my culture forever. And I ended up like doing this project and making a saffron ice cream, recreating one, but vegan and raw ice cream that was made with saffron and cardamom and pistachios, because that's like a typical Persian delicacy. Mm-hmm. And then everyone was like, oh my God, this is so good. But I realized I didn't want to be in the ice cream business. So then I was like, I really want to do a product and I'll just see what it is. I am really passionate about wellness and the message, which is really like handling our emotional well-being as the basis of living a more fulfilling life. In my opinion, like wellness is that foundation. I mean, emotional wellness is that foundation in mental health. So then we had a pop-up at The Fullest. Like we launched The Fullest, but we were just a magazine and we were just talking about emotional wellness and like clean eating, not because you want to lose weight, but because you just want to feel good and have quality of life. And so we were like this quarterly magazine. We were thinking about, we had like a little pop-up shop in Laguna. And I was kind of curating different brands that I loved. And I was seeing what people were interested in. And I was the one working at the pop-up like every single day. And I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's just buying turmeric lattes. This is so crazy. And that's awesome that people have now this, it's like a meme in their head, like turmeric anti-inflammatory, yeah. Good. So they'd like come, it was an easy way to consume turmeric just in this like powder form. So it's like, no one's talking about saffron at all. And no one even knows about the benefits. I know about the benefits. I know it's great for anxiety, depression, ADHD, and all this stuff. But I'm going to go back and like look at this dose, and there's like so much scientific evidence now that has been done over the last 20 years proving the actual dose that you need to take in order to have those benefits. And that's 30 milligrams. So 30 milligrams a day of saffron has been studied, double-blind placebo study, to be as effective as Prozac to treat anxiety and depression, as effective as Ritalin.
So it'll make you happy.
Yes. Like instant happiness, basically. But you need 30 milligrams, which is 15 threads, which is 5 flowers. Our latte has 25 flowers that were harvested per serving. That's 150 milligrams. It's more of a traditional Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine dosage. That's still very safe, effective, potent, but not like crazy potent that you're gonna like overdose on it, which would be a 4-gram dose, which is like 40 saffron lattes or whatever. 30 to 40 saffron. Yeah. So it's like really potent. And what they found in the studies was saffron worked almost instantly in elevating mood. Wow. So a lot of these pharmaceuticals take about like 6 weeks to kick in, but saffron can change your mood. Most people report back after taking our product within an hour of consuming it. So it could just be something that you lean on, whether you're going on medication or not, or you feel like you have side effects. It's a great aphrodisiac. And a lot of times when people are on medications, they feel like low libido. They feel like they just like don't have this, there's this part of them that loses this like excitement about life. And so saffron like can really help that.
So do people take it daily?
Yes. So at 30 milligrams a day, you can take our capsules, which is a 30 milligram extract, which is the equivalent of like 90 threads. And then our latte, which is 150 milligrams. And some people do it twice a day because there are studies about even like weight loss, because it helps with curbing your your cravings,
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, because we emotionally eat.
And it's a lot of, basically stress-induced eating and snacking. And as moms, I feel like that's all we can do a lot of that.
Just graze all day.
Yeah, because we're just kind of like, we don't have time for ourselves.
Eat a little here, a little there.
You eat the leftovers.
The kids' food.
Yeah. So it's really great for moms. So we have this like program where you can have either a latte in the morning and a capsule at night, or vice versa. So you take it twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, because they've also found it's really, really helpful for sleep. And the way that it works, people are always like, how does it help with sleep, but also help with ADD?
Yeah.
And the reason is because it calms your nervous system. And when you're calm, you can think better and you can be more focused. And when you're calm, you can wind down and sleep better. And it helps people with insomnia.
It's
not the Adderall ADD. It's just like exactly what it gets the root cause, and which is what we want, right? Because you're creating your serotonin and dopamine in your gut. 90% of serotonin is made in the gut, 50% of dopamine is made in the gut, and saffron is a major anti-inflammatory.
Well, we had a doctor on, and it's like the doctor was saying, they think about this as your brain, your gut is your brain.
Yeah. Your gut is controlling all of it.
Yeah.
And so when your gut is inflamed, you're less likely to create the optimal levels of serotonin and dopamine. So as a byproduct, it's also helping with like so many digestive conditions because it's a major anti-inflammatory. You need 30 milligrams of saffron to get that anti-inflammatory effect. You need like 400 milligrams of curcumin to get that effect. So way less saffron goes such a long way. Okay. And our capsules have curcumin and saffron in them.
So you get both.
You get both. And like my kids take them, but we open them up.
Morning and then a latte at night, or the opposite.
Yeah, or the opposite. It's like a 30-day program, but you can do it like
I know.
You can do it like for however long you want. It's not like, but 30 days is like a really good time to see like a big shift in your mood. And like my friend Jenna Cavello, who owns Agent Notorious, she laughs all the time because she's like, you saved like 2 of my friends' marriages.
Oh, well, there we go,
it's
guys.
So crazy.
Okay. I know. I'm like, I will be getting Drew on this as well. Everybody's on this.
So I love sharing about it. Like what you were saying, what does saffron mean to you? It just feels authentic to me.
Yeah.
It's part of my culture. It's part of my lineage. It's also something that my mom was obsessed with and her grandmother was obsessed with in this crazy way where I guess they were like,
but I feel like you're the one that's like sharing it now.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
I learned it from them and then I'm spreading it and I love it. And saffron's having a big moment. It's now.
Well, the fullest seems like it's having a big moment.
Thank you. That's really nice.
Awesome.
It's been fun. It's growing. It's been growing, like doubling year over year for the last like 3 years, our sales.
That's all a business owner can hope for, right?
I know, right?
That's amazing.
It's really fun. It's really, really fun. And I had to, as a mom, like decide how I wanted to grow it. And my kids are always going to be number one and my main priority. So it's just like really interesting because if anything were to come up for them, I would like drop it and not. So it's nice because I don't have any like investors that are both. Yeah, I have like one family friend investor and one friend that is like helping me spread the word and like that's kind of it. It's nothing and they both understand I'm a mom and like I'm gonna 100% do my best. Like I'm gonna do all the in-store Air One demos myself, which I have to go to Air One in all 10 locations twice. And
can you bring Air One down here?
I know. Well, they're going to come.
When?
They're coming. I've been talking to them forever, but they're going to open Manhattan Beach first.
And then?
And I'm like, someone told me Long Beach, but I don't know. But I've been talking to them. They've been scouting.
It's ridiculous.
They wanted the Mother's location so badly.
In CDM?
Yes, they wanted it before Mother's was like, so that's how long they've been looking.
Oh my God.
But they have a really, really good team that helps them with expansion and they know where to go. And they're going to be in like Newport Mesa area or CDM. I don't think there's like,
Okay. So tell everyone where they can find you.
Okay. So you can find me on Instagram, Nikki Bostwick. I see that. And Nikki at thefullest.com. That's my personal email. And you can follow us at The Fullest Co. on Instagram. We're now on TikTok too. I don't know the handle.
Something of the fullest. Yeah.
I have a podcast. It's called Nikki Bostwick Unfiltered. So if you're interested in the crazy stuff I just shared on this podcast, definitely take a look. But I want to leave everyone with this. Like, I know it sounds so crazy. A lot of the things I shared, like it's normal to me, but it is wild. And I'm just sharing it because it's like my normal. But I think the main thing as moms is the best thing we can do is create these different containers for ourselves where like, this is my container. I don't have a TV at my house and I cook with really great ingredients. And at home, I do everything the way I want. And when I go out into the world, like it might not always be the way I want it, but it's okay because I tried my best. And like, so I'm not going to stress about it. And I think that's like the best way to approach parenting and just know that you know best and trust your intuition and the rest will follow. Like when you trust your intuition, it doesn't matter if you're giving antibiotics or you're giving like your 14-year-old Z-Pack and like all this stuff. None of that matters because the main thing that matters is like teaching your children to trust their intuition. And if they feel or if you feel that they need a medication or if they don't need it, go based off of that and like don't stress.
Yeah.
Such
I
good
love that.
advice.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
for
fun,
being
Nikki.
here.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Camp Chaos. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Connect with us on social media at Camp Chaos Podcast. Until next time, campers.